Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. It's Tuesday. Hope everybody's having a good start to the week. It's been about a year now since the COVID-19 pandemic started, and we were just talking about before the show how it's been a weird and just crazy year overall for everybody being at home. But I just encourage everybody to stay positive, and that light at the end of the tunnel is coming. So everybody just power through. But I hope everyone's having a good start to the week, and I'm excited for another exciting episode. And I'm also pleased to announce and introduce my guest, Sara Marshall. How are you doing today?
I'm good. It's so weird when people say my name. Like for some reason, it's like I'm not used to other people talking about me or like introducing me, and it just like makes me feel so important. So, hi.
Yeah, well, we're definitely excited to have you on the show tonight. I know that you and I have had some great conversations about sports on social media and also on Dear Pats Nation with Ray and Connor, who I've also had on the show before too. So
Mhm.
it's definitely an honor to have you. I just want to start by having you just talk a little bit about how you got involved in sports and working in sports, because I know you've done some writing for the
Mhm.
Patriots content and also the podcasting.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I was thinking about this earlier when we went like looking over the notes, and I was like, okay, like I feel like so many people's stories start with them being an athletic person and like getting involved in sports, and I was like the complete opposite of that. Like I have no coordination at all. I have terrible like eyesight. Like I can't catch a ball. Like I can't do anything, okay? So I was always one of those people that enjoyed watching. I mean, it's even like with video games. As something as simple as video games, I'm terrible at. So it's like, okay, I'll just watch. So I actually was born in Boston, and so I lived there until I was 13. And then I moved to Seattle, but there was always sports on at my house. At my grandparents' house, I spent a lot of time there. So I didn't really start watching until it was like the Tom Brady era. Probably like 2002, 2003, I think is when I started to be like heavily into it. And so ever since then, it's like every Sunday I'm watching football. I'm the biggest Patriots fan ever. So yeah, it was just always a thing that was on in my house. My grandfather watched everything but hockey, basically. So sorry to all the Bruins fans out there, but I don't watch hockey. I'm sorry. Yeah, I would just sit with him, and I didn't understand what was going on. I thought everything was boring until I got older. And then yeah, I was just a big Patriots fan in my house. My mom, my sister, and I were just always watching every Sunday. Living in Seattle for 10 years was a little difficult to see Patriots games. So
Yeah.
watched whatever, lots of Seahawks games. And now I'm in Arizona. So I finally the 2019 season, finally I got a NFL Sunday ticket. So I can see Patriots games more than just the national ones. It's been a blessing and a curse, I have to say, because
Yeah.
when it comes to football, especially, I'm very superstitious. So if I feel like I'm watching the Patriots and they were doing badly, I would literally change the channel. And if they were doing better, I was like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice watching the Patriots because I'm making them play bad. So I don't do that now. um, so as far as getting into like covering them, I never really knew what I wanted to do as a career. You know, like I feel like they do kind of try to make you decide that at such a young age. And so at first I just went straight to work. So after I graduated high school, I just went into working my way up in the retail industry. And then I just was like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. So I ended up leaving my job and took some time off, thought about going back to school, didn't do it. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? So, you know, I dabbled in Twitter. I created sports Twitter a couple years ago where all I was going to do was talk about sports. That's it. Because I was like, you know what? I need an outlet. I'm outside of the Boston area. Everyone around me doesn't want to hear me talking about it, you know? So I did that. And then that just, one day I tweeted out something like, does anyone have any, like direction they can send me in like the sports media or something? I got a bunch of DMs being like, hey, we love your tweets. Would you want to write for us? And I'm like, my tweets make you want me to write for you? Okay. Like, so, yeah, so I wrote for one website, and then that didn't last too long. And then I joined, Full Press Coverage. So I had a weekly spot with them, and I had a weekly article. And so I did that this whole season, which was quite the season, as I'm sure most Patriots fans will remember this one. So that was really fun, and I'm really enjoying it, just trying to, keep doing that, and working my way through as much as I can, doing podcasts with awesome people like you, and just keep writing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I remember even just seeing some of your tweets before we were on a show together, and just your deep analysis of the Patriots. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I'd love to have a conversation with her. And then we got introduced through Dear Pats Nation, which is another show that Sarah's on regularly, and that they've had me on their show as well. So we kind of got connected through them, but you definitely are doing good things. And so we're definitely looking forward to seeing your future in the sports industry, and continuing to grow.
Thank you. I love the feedback, because I am such, like, I always say this, I'm a very optimistic person when it comes to sports. So much to the point that it probably gets annoying to people, because I mean, I didn't earn the title of being a homer for nothing. I'm very optimistic, but in my life, in my daily life, I'm such a pessimist. So just hearing the feedback, it just like helps me just a little bit. So, and starting in such a difficult industry, it can be kind of, it can be hard. So it's awesome to be meeting, especially other women in sports, so they understand. So I'm so glad that we met and that we're having this conversation. I'm so excited, because like we were saying before we went on, I was supposed to be with you about a month ago.
Yes.
And then a bunch of personal stuff happened in my life, unfortunately, but I'm so glad that I'm here and that we can talk sports, and I'm like not annoying, because I get to talk to people about Boston sports and they want to hear what I have to say. So that's super exciting.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you talked about being positive about sports, and I think that's great. Sometimes it's hard to be positive, and one team that we find, or at least I find, is hard to be positive about right now is the Celtics. And I say that because they give me hope, and then they go downhill, and I start to lose that hope, and then they'll get me excited again, and then they'll get me not excited again. They start to lose games again, and it's just so inconsistent with them, and it's been really hard to watch this season so far. And I think coming into this year, there were a lot of high hopes for the team in terms of the roster that was built up, and even with the offseason signings that Danny Ainge had made, I think that we thought that was all going to pan out. And then we watch games now, and you see players like Jeff Teague, who's not really panning out, and Tristan Thompson lately has been showing improvement from the beginning of the season, and I think he's kind of starting to figure things out more in terms of his role on the team. But overall, how do you feel about the Celtics season so far and where they're at right now?
I'm with you. It's very inconsistent, and I feel like that's just the theme of Boston sports. Like from, I hear it from Bruins fans that are like, yeah, we're doing great, and then it's like they're not. We have the Red Sox in preseason. People weren't too happy. They're 0-2. So, and of course we already know about the Patriots season. That was the epitome of their season. It was inconsistent. So it's not super surprising, I guess, just if we're looking at a theme here. But yeah, I do think that there were high expectations for the team, just because, what is it? The three of the last 4 seasons, they were in the Eastern Conference Finals. So, there's a lot of expectations to be met there, regardless of all the improvements that have been made, like with the Nets getting James Harden and Kyrie and KD actually playing. But yeah, I think that, like you said, Tristan Thompson's definitely fitting into that role, because I think that some people forget that he's not supposed to be like a scorer. So, he's doing what he was brought in to do. I think that the team has it, like people really want to make big trades and stuff. And I don't know if you saw Danny Ainge, I think it was from today, was asked about if they were going to make any big trades, because everyone wants them to make huge trades. And he said that they don't want to be making a big trade just for a temporary fix. Or he said, I think he said something like he doesn't want it to be like Band-Aid. Like if they're going to trade for somebody, that they want it to be a long-term thing that can actually make them successful. And I'm with that. I don't think that they should be going out there spending millions and millions of dollars on a person that might be able to help them get better now, but you need it in the long too. So, I mean, I could talk so much about this. I have all this stuff about Marcus Smart here too, because I think that they're missing him too. I don't know what you think, but I think Marcus Smart being injured has been a huge problem for them.
I agree with that completely, and that was something I wanted to bring up too, was that there is a noticeable difference between when Marcus Smart was in the games and where they're at now. And you're noticing that there's that hole there, especially on defense, because he's a good defensive player. And the defense in general is just so inconsistent, and it's frustrating to watch game to game because they just just leave players wide open for threes.
I know.
Like, what are you doing? Like, why was there nobody on him? Like, like you're seeing players like Russell Westbrook wide open for threes. Mm-hmm. It's like not good. And that's where I think that Marcus Smart is really missed, is especially on the defensive side of the ball. But also, I mean, his scoring has improved too. So that's another thing. I think that when he eventually comes back, I'm hoping that could help improve kind of where they're at now. But also his name has been tossed around in terms of a trade scenario before the deadline. I've heard maybe trading him and Robert Williams, packaging the two of them together to get somebody that like a big man or something that can be a threat in the paint. That's because I do feel like size is an issue with this team, and that kind of has been an issue the last few years. They have a disadvantage when it comes to size relative to other teams in the East. And I do think that that's something that could be an issue down the road in crunch time when they're playing these other solid teams in the East who have a size advantage over them, just because basketball is such a size heavy sport. And I just worry that they lack in that category. But when you talk about a trade in terms of somebody that can help us long term, I'm with you on that too, because I would hate to see them give up some of this young talent for somebody that is only really going to be here just to help them this year to possibly make a championship run. That might not happen, and then they're kind of parting ways with some of these young guys that could be a serious asset to this team down the road.
Yeah, and I think, we have to wait and see what's going on with Smart, which I think he's supposed to probably be coming back after the All-Star game. So that's soon. I mean, they originally said, I think, like 2 to 3 weeks, and it's obviously been more than that. So I'm kind of okay with them letting him sit a little bit longer. If they rushed him back, that would be even worse. But I do think that people are forgetting, Kemba has gotten a lot better. People want to use him as a scapegoat for a lot of games because, there were some games where he didn't play too well, but he's been phenomenal the last handful. Also, Robert Williams is really stepping up, and I think that them starting him should be an option because he's just so ridiculous. I mean, like, I tweeted last week because I'm in Phoenix, in case anyone doesn't know. So I don't get to see a lot of Celtics games. I only get to see the national ones. But I remember they said that he has like a 7'6" wingspan or something crazy like that. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you should be putting that in as a starter. Like, why are we throwing in, like these random, it's like every single night it's a different lineup, which that's fine if that's what Brad thinks. But I'm like, I think you should be considering Williams. Like, he's doing a lot of good things. And so I think that I don't like the idea of trading Smart. I think that part of that's just, the homer in me. Like, the idea of just not having like heart and soul of the Celtics on the team just like hurts my heart so bad. But yeah, I just think that they're young and they have the possibility to get better. But I did want to say this too. So I was thinking about it as well. People are talking a lot about, I don't know if you've seen the tweets that are a little bit absurd, if you ask my opinion, that they're just saying that like Jalen and Jason are like selfish scorers and like whatever. And I just thought that was the most ridiculous thing ever because I was like, wait, what? Like they're getting the most points every night because they're like the two best on the team, And I think that part of their struggles might be because of that, because there's so much of the weight of the wins of the games on them. Like, I went through the stats. Every single game except for 3 games, the top scorer was either Tatum or Brown.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. I'm like, no wonder why like every night they're scoring over 30 because like they're the only ones scoring when there's like a huge difference. Like I even looked at I was looking at all the stats today. The average points per game, Tatum's getting 25.2, Brown's 25, and then there's a huge dump. Kemba obviously has only started 8 teams, goes down to 18.3. Like that's a huge jump. That's a lot to be putting on those guys, and I get it. They're all stars. They're the leaders of the team, but they're still young, and we need more like the collaborative effort. But I'm with you. Like I don't know about all these crazy trades. I think that it needs to be like a long-term thing, not a temporary thing.
Yeah, I agree for sure. I mean, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are one of the most fun duos in the NBA to watch, I think, right now. Like, they're right up there with, watching LeBron and AD together, are one of those types of duos that, in the fact that they're both so young still and have so much growth left, I hope that the team can hang on to those two, because I would love to see them prosper and grow as Celtics, because if they're playing like this now, like imagine them down the road when they've developed fully into the players that they really can be. So they're super exciting to watch. But I sit here and when I watch games and they pull them from Brad pulls them from the game and they're not playing, it's just like a definitive fall off in the way that the team plays offensively. And it's like, I mean, that's great that we have these two guys that are fantastic players and fantastic scorers and can average about 30 or so a night, 25, give or take points like that. And it's great to have that base, because going forward, this team can start to be built around players like that. And the fact that we have that solid duo for the future is great, but you can't go out there and have two players carry the offense every single night either. And I think that this is another reason why people were concerned about depth, because we need other players that can do more offensively, because I worry about what if one of them gets injured or something like that. And it's like, who's going to step into that third role, that third scorer? And I keep hoping that is going to be Kemba, and I still want to hold out hope for Kemba because he came back from an injury and just hasn't played as many games as everybody else. So I'm hoping that maybe his points per night might start to increase with time, but they do need that third guy, I feel like, and it's kind of unclear who that's going to be right now, because you have other players contributing and have done some good things like Peyton Pritchard. I like what I've seen from him. Or even Coates, who really has stepped up on both sides of the ball this year, both offensively and defensively. And that's been great to see too. But I just think that there's something else needs to be done in terms of other people having to step up and score more, because those two will come out there and that you can trust them to put up a lot of points per night, but you can't just rely on them to carry the offense and expect to beat good teams, especially down the road when it's crunch time and we're getting to the games that are more important and count more.
Yeah, and they can't be having them play 48 minutes a game. They can't be in the entire time. I mean, like you mentioned it, what if they got injured or something, right?
Yeah.
Well, Tatum was out, remember, for COVID, and that didn't look too good. So, like it worries me too. And I'm really hoping that Kemba's kind of like hitting his stride and, maybe he's on the up and up. So he can be that third guy. I just feel like it really is. It's like, I know that maybe it's not necessarily an excuse or it's not the most popular answer, but I really do think that when Smart's in, like, this is just a totally different team. Like, he just brings such a different energy, the defense. And, I hate that we have like the ongoing joke of like, second quarter or third quarter Celtics. Like, I hate that. Like, it's just like, I don't want to be like, okay, that was like a great first quarter, but now we're going into the second, or like, oh, it was the first good half, and now like, what are we gonna, like, I hate that too. And so that's something that they need to work on as well, because I mean, like, when they're playing so well, I mean, even like, I think it was the last game, even though we won, the fourth quarter, they were just getting outscored, and it was like, what is happening? Like, where did all of the energy go? Where did the defense go? And like you said, why are you leaving these people open for 3-pointers? Like, where are you? Why are you just standing there and basically letting them do that? So, it's hard to exactly pinpoint what the issue is, but I've said a million times, I really do think that Smart's absence has hit them a lot harder than a lot of people probably want to admit.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I think, I mean, as much as people don't really want to admit this either, I do think that they are missing Gordon Hayward. And I do think that there is a noticeable difference now in terms of just the way that this team plays. And I think there's a gap that you can kind of see without having Gordon Hayward. And I hoped that that wouldn't be an issue. And I hoped because, you know, he was injured so much and when he was playing, he was impactful, but he wasn't playing a lot. So I really hoped that they would be able to compensate for that. But I do think not having Gordon Hayward has made a difference. And as the season is progressing, we can notice that more and more, I do think also. I just really think that in terms of just like you said with the fourth quarter or just coming out in the second half, you can never feel confident in a lead that they have either because you come in and you see them blow leads all the time in the third quarter and especially the fourth quarter. They're really not, they have not been playing well in the fourth quarter at all. So even if they have a big lead at halftime, you can never be confident in that and feel comfortable going into the second half because they tend to blow leads against you. It doesn't even matter who their opponent is, even if it's not a good team, they still somehow are blowing these leads late. And it's really concerning because if this team wants to make a serious postseason run, you're not going to be able to get away with that when you're playing teams like Brooklyn, who have that big three over there that are going to be in the game the whole game, like fighting until the end of the game. And you can't have this team blowing leads like that late and expect them to make a deep playoff run. And whatever the problem is, it does need to be addressed, but it's hard to address it without knowing exactly where the issue is. And I don't necessarily think that trading for one player would necessarily just fix everything either. And I think that's also the problem.
Yeah, and I think people forget about like team chemistry. Like, yeah, it would be great. Maybe they get, you know, whatever player people want because it's like basically any possibility of a player leaving a team. It's typical Boston fans where they're like, hey, they're coming to Boston. They're coming to Boston. Like if there was like a Brad Stevens gif, like the Bill Belichick one, I swear that's what Celtics fans would post every time there's like some sort of rumor or like trade idea because they just want everybody. But you know, once let's say they pick up somebody great that people want, that doesn't mean that they're going to work well with the team. So, I mean, especially in the middle of the season, like that's important. So I think that we definitely need to see what happens when Smart gets back, see how that goes. I mean, the trade deadline is getting close. So it's like kind of cutting it a little bit close to that. But yeah, I mean, like the season's only going to get tougher as teams are playing more. So I don't know. It's like, I think that people need to kind of mend their expectations. You know, like there's a lot of good teams this year. So we might have come into it thinking that we were going to be, you know, another Eastern Conference finalist, maybe. But, you know, Boston fans, we get really excited. We get our hopes up and then we just get disappointed. So I'm just like, you know what? Just enjoy every game. Whatever happens, happens. But I do agree with Gordon. I wanted to mention that too. Especially how he was being towards the end of his time with Celtics. I think people were ignoring that because it was like, well, he's injury prone and he doesn't, you know, whatever. But like he was playing really well. And so I do think that having him as a reliable guy when he could play is a big problem for them as well. I agree with you. 100%.
Yeah, I feel like this team would be looking at a much better record right now if they had Gordon Hayward on the team still. And it's unfortunate that it is that way, but I really do feel like they would be looking at a much better record and a lot of these concerns would not exist if he was still there. But the good thing about the East right now is that it is kind of wide open still just because teams' records are kind of all over the place right now. I mean, you have teams under 500 that are in playoff spots right now just because of how the East is. And you kind of have, you know, you have Philly that's up there. That's really good. They've been playing really well. And then Brooklyn is up there, Milwaukee. But then after that, it's kind of it's wide open in terms of those seedings after that. And so I think that's a good thing for us as Celtics fans because we can look at this as like there's still time to turn the season around and they could still sneak into a playoff spot even if they're playing like they are right now, just for the sole fact that the East is so wide open and so many records are close right now in the Eastern Conference. So that to me is a little more settling, but they cannot continue to play like this and expect to compete with anybody when it comes to down the road when they need to win big games. I would not trust the team and how they're playing right now and the makeup to beat teams like that, like Milwaukee or Philly or Brooklyn down the road. And you mentioned the chemistry thing, and I do feel like there's a lack of chemistry somewhere. And it just really seems to me like that's an issue. And people are quick to blame a lot of this on Kemba because they're like, oh, once Kemba came back, we started losing games, but we were playing really well before that. But in the grand scheme of things, I wanted to give Kemba time when he came back. I was like, the guy's coming off of a serious injury, and he hasn't played like everybody else, and he hasn't gotten the chance to be reacclimated from being out of the bubble and everything. So circumstantially, he needed time to come back. But now he's had some games. I mean, even the other night, he put up 30 points against the Lakers. So there's promise there with Kemba too, and I don't think Kemba should be included in a trade if they do trade for somebody. I would hate to see him go because at the end of the day, he's still an all-star point guard, and we have him on this team for a reason, and I do think that he's a good leader and a selfless player on the court. So I would hate to see him go, and I just think people are kind of jumping to too many conclusions right now if they say that Kemba is not the answer for this team or that he's bringing the team down or causing a lot of the problems.
Yeah, they always need a scapegoat. I think that's just what it is. It's always, like, even if we want to talk about the Patriots, the scapegoat last year was Cam. Everything that was wrong with the team was Cam. And it's just not right? Like, because there's team, first of all. So with the Celtics, it's like they're not losing because of Kemba. Like, I know that we want to find an excuse, but that's not true. So I am excited, though, like when Smart comes back, like I would love to see a healthy Smart, Tatum, Brown, Kemba starting 4. And whoever the 5th one is, whoever they rotate in, Williams, Thompson, Tice, whoever they rotate in. But I think that's exciting. And I think that people should be looking forward to that instead of trying to sell the team basically because they think that they're just so bad. So I think that'll be really exciting. And how they work together, I think will really dictate how the rest of the season goes.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. And a lot of people too, and I actually heard something about this earlier today, the possibility of Brad Stevens being on the chopping block potentially and in jeopardy of his job because is the crowd out there that's blaming this on the coaching and saying it's a Brad Stevens issue. He's the worst fourth quarter coach in the NBA and he can't coach this team to a championship. And, those thoughts, in a way, I can understand where people are coming from in terms of the fact that he's gotten them so close and they just can't finish the job. But I personally don't think that this is a coaching issue. I really do think that Brad Stevens is a good coach. I think that the problem is more about right now just the makeup of the team and having that depth and durability to be able to compete with other teams, especially on defense. And I think I would be pretty disappointed if how they decide to address some of these problems is to let Brad Stevens go, because I don't think that a new coach would be the best answer right now either, because you don't want to – these players are used to Brad's coaching style and they're used to working with him, so why throw in a new coach now in the mix of all this? But I also do think on the other side of that Brad's timetable in terms of his job could be in jeopardy as the season – kind of comes to a close and how they do this year. Because if they get close enough like they always do and they don't go all the way, then it could be a situation that we're looking at where they do part ways with Brad Stevens after this season, maybe, if they don't get to where they want to get to. But I think that he needs to be set up to have that kind of success before they're like, okay, we're going to get rid of Brad.
Yeah, and I think that's always a thing too. It's always a coach thing. And I think that people have just short-term memory where I obviously, what they did last year or however many years ago, it's not completely relevant to what they're doing now, obviously, because that's in the past. But, as we said, they've been to 3 of the last 4 Eastern Conference finals. So that's a big deal. And they've had a lot of turnover. They had Kyrie, they had Gordon, they had Mookie, what was his name? Mook Morris. They've had Yeah, so they've had these players coming in. Now they have Kemba, and whether he's in or he's out. So I think that it's been an inconsistent team for Brad too, and he can only do what he can with what he has. So like I said, I think that bringing Smart back, having a healthy Kemba as well, how that ended up going with those 4 starters for sure, is going to say a lot about the future of the team. And then, as we were saying about Brad Stevens as well. Because I think that's like the core of the Celtics right there. So if you can't do a lot with that, then yeah, there needs to be something changed.
Yeah, and we do have people here in the comments that are saying that we need more bench pieces. And I do agree with that. And I think the bench is something that has been an issue for this team for the past few years. And we saw that come to light in the playoffs because you had a great starting 5, and then there were not a lot of players to turn to after that. And I do think that this team does need more bench pieces because you go into these games, and like you said about having enough for Brad to work with, I do think that that's a big theme here and a big pattern is that there's not a lot of options for him to utilize and pull from when it comes to his bench. And I don't necessarily feel confident that the bench that we have now can help carry them to a championship when he's subbing players in when he needs to rest his starters. And we've already even seen that be an issue because he pulls players like Jalen or Jason or even Kemba, everybody else kind of seems to not know what they're doing or fall apart, or the scoring kind of starts to become a mess. And that's when we start to see them blow leads too. So that really does go to show to me that the bench is an issue and that they need to kind of get more pieces to round that out and sub more people in that can be reliable and make shots when you need them to. And that when you pull your starters, Brad can be confident that he's putting in players that can kind of help really fill those shoes and not be worried that every time he pulls his starters, we're sitting here like, okay, here comes the time when they blow leads.
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned earlier too, there's just so much resting on the shoulders of Tatum and Brown. And I think that people want to make it seem like it's something an ego thing with them, but it's really not. I think that they're probably aware of the vast difference when they're on the court and when they're not. Obviously, we sit at home and watch as fans and we see, all the tweets, all the things that people say. It's like, why do you have Tatum and Brown out in the 4th quarter? And it's like, well, because they've already played 40 minutes. Like they need to take some breaks, So I think that's just a big thing too, that it's hard to figure out like how to cope with that because obviously they're the all-stars, they're leaders of the team, but yeah, something needs to be worked out so that it's not that issue. We can't get mad when Kemba's taking the final shot of the game and it's like, well, it can't always be Tatum and Brown. We have to have like a well-rounded team that can contribute, like you said.
Yeah, and even in that crazy OT game against the Pelicans, that was such a stressful game too. But in that game, I remember even I tweeted it was towards the end of regulation. It was when the Celtics had possession and there was like very little time on the clock, and you needed somebody to score to basically tie the game and send it to overtime. And I remember tweeting like, unless your name is Jason Tatum, I don't want you taking this shot right now. And he did take it and he made it and he sent the game to overtime. But that's the point though, is like, I shouldn't be having to sit here and be like, I only feel confident in you taking this shot right now if your name is Jason Tatum. And that's an issue to me. And that kind of shows me that they do need other players like that can be clutch in the final seconds of games when you need somebody to hit a shot like that. You need more players that you can turn to than to just be like, oh, we have to get the ball to Jason because he's the only one that we feel like can do this right now.
Yeah, like I think we said it as well, like it's great to have a player like that, like that you can rely on so heavily, but then at the same time, like in moments where you need a team, it's like, well, okay, well, all-star guy, our favorite guy, he needs a break. Like he can't do everything. He can't be scoring 60 points a night just to make sure that you win, So I think, and like we said too, defense has been a huge thing. I remember they lost to the Mavs because no one covered Luka. So he gets a 3-pointer and leaves 0.1 second on the clock, and it's like, come on guys, like you had that in the bag. So that's another thing that it's like, okay, we need to adjust that too, because it doesn't matter how many points you score if you're leaving people open for 3-pointers and then you get no time to adjust and catch up or whatever. That's the thing. We don't keep doing catch up. We want to get those leads and maintain those leads instead of having like, oh, we have a 25-point lead. And then, you leave, you go to the bathroom for a few minutes, you eat, and then you come back and it's like, now you're down 12. It's like, what happened? It was like 10 minutes. What happened?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, did they honestly think that team was not going to get Luka the ball at that point?
Right.
Like, who else is going to take that shot for them at that point, too? And it's like you leave the one person open for a perfect shot to end that game that is the only person on that team that they would put in that situation and have hit that shot. And that's an issue, too. It's like they leave these big 3-point scorers wide open. And so it's like, yeah, you can go and you can put up a bunch of points every night. Great. You can have two of your starting 5 averaging about 25 to 30 a night. That's fantastic. But that can only go so far. You need to be able to have the defense, too, to maintain those elites, because they cannot go and play against players like KD and expect everything to just be okay because they have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown putting up all these points every night, because then you can get to the other side of the ball and you'll have James Harden and you'll have KD just lighting it up on their side of the court, too. So it's like, who really wins in that situation? I would be worried to play a team like that when we don't have the defense to guard those types of players that can be clutch when they need to be clutch and make those types of shots. And even, James Harden, I know there was a lot of skepticism around him ending up in Brooklyn, and I think for good reason, because people didn't really know how that group of 3 was going to mesh together with Kyrie and KD and Harden. But he's been playing really, really good basketball over there, and they seem to really be figuring things out. And if I'm looking at Brooklyn right now and I'm looking at the Celtics right now, it's not great to see how they're playing and then look at our team and really feel like this is a team that can compete with that, because it's not, unfortunately. And I think obviously something does need to change, and I think now it's on Danny Ainge to figure that out. And I don't blame his thought process in terms of, if he does get somebody and bring somebody in, he wants it to be somebody that can help us long term. But we need that long term person to come in now, or else the rest of the season is just not going to be good, and we might see a lot more of this frustration. But obviously, with it being an unprecedented season and stuff, still with COVID still being a thing and them being out of the bubble and back to traveling, those are all factors. And, with the no fans and everything still, but like now they're slowly bringing fans back to games too, which I think at the Garden, they said that they can bring fans back. And I do think that will make a difference too, just because the fans are such a big part of the game, that I think having their fans in the stadium at TD Garden, I think it might make a difference in the way that they're playing some of these games.
And they thrive off that energy, right? Like, I know when I've gone to games, any type of game, football, basketball, whatever, it's like, you can just feel it. Like, it doesn't even matter if they're losing. Like, if people are excited, you're just like, oh yeah, like you're just like excited to be there. And so, they thrive off that. And I'm excited for a lot of the players who are newer to the Celtics too, to get that. Tristan Thompson was excited when he found out that they were going to have fans. So I think that just the next couple of weeks are going to be very telling. And if that doesn't go well, then that's basically going to be the year.
Yeah, I agree for sure. The next couple of weeks are a very, very important part of the season for them. If they can prove that they can turn things around in that time frame, then I'll start to feel a little better. And even in some of the comments still here too, we have smart return is crucial. That is true. It is crucial, because defensively, he's the missing piece that is just absolutely killing the defense right now. And so having him back, and hopefully everything kind of starts to come full circle at that point and click again, because they were playing very, very good basketball at the start of the season, like very good basketball. And then it was almost like once Tatum had the whole COVID situation affect him and he couldn't play because of the exposure, everything kind of started going downhill at that point. So, but if we have the Celtics we had at the very beginning of the season, then that's the team that we all want to see. And that's the team that a lot of other teams in the East wouldn't want to see down the stretch. But can we get back to that point? Because that was a fantastic team that was playing really well game to game and coming out and just showing that they are one of those teams that came to really play this year and get things done. But lately, it just is hard to really feel like we can get back to that.
Mm-hmm. And the thing at the beginning too, they were doing all of that without Kemba. So it was like, if you could play like that and then add Kemba and then even, have an upgrade with Time Lord because he's playing even better, Tristan Thompson playing better, I'm like, they could be so good. So I'm like, fingers crossed, like always just trying to, be positive, trying to be optimistic. I'm one of those fans, like I said, but also trying to be realist. So I always say manage your expectations. That way you don't end up disappointed. You're excited, I guess, or you're fine with either outcome.
Yeah, and I mean, even Peyton Pritchard, he really stepped up in Kemba's absence too. And I liked watching that kid when he was in college. I just thought he was a really fun player to watch when he was in college. So I was thrilled when the Celtics drafted him. And I was like, this is going to be great. This kid is up and coming. He's going to be really good. And I think he's really making his mark in terms of being one of those players that they can rely on to come off the bench. And I think that that's a good thing too, is you have this young kid that is really seeming to start to find his place on the team that can come and step in off the bench. And it was, I think, a really good thing when Kemba was gone to be able to see what he has, because when we watch games now, we know that he can come into the games and be somebody that we feel like we can rely on, because I really liked what I saw from that kid when Kemba was out.
Even Ojale had a good couple games too. So I'm like, that's good because, he's been on the team for a while. So it would be nice if that could be a consistent thing, not just like a one-off game where he gets, 24 points or whatever he did that one night. Like, it would be nice if, coming off the bench, like we said, that we don't have to be so excited about the rookie. It's like, well, what about that's great having a great rookie, but like we need, some of these other seasoned guys that it would be great that, they could all contribute. So it's not just like, oh, we'll swap out Tatum and put in Pritchard and then put back Tatum in and take out like that. It's too much.
Yeah, no, it is. I do think I'm optimistic and hopeful that things will turn around for them. I hope that Danny Ainge makes the best decision when it comes to the growth and development of this team. And I mean, we didn't know that coming into the season that Teague and Thompson at the beginning of the year were going to play the way that they were playing and not really performing up to expectations. So that wasn't really on him, because on paper, those seemed like really good signings. So then they came into this season and now it's seeming like, those weren't the best options for this team. But I'm hoping that they can figure something out and that they can start to turn the season around, because there's still a lot left of the season. I mean, they are playing as we speak, but they are right at 500. And so I think at least they're at 500 and can just hopefully use this momentum now that they've won a couple games in a row. I'm hoping they can kind of keep that momentum going and just continue to play these games well. I mean, even the other day, the game against the Wizards, I mean, that game was scary to watch too. And that game, I even said afterwards, I said, I mean, I don't care that it came down to the last possession. We needed the win and we got the win. But it is scary when you're playing a team like the Wizards, who are still kind of figuring everything out with the moves that they made this offseason. And it has to come down to a last possession against a team like that. So even that itself, there are obviously things that still need to be adjusted and figured out. But I'm hoping that as time progresses and Smart comes back and some more things fall into place, that we might just start to see some better basketball as time goes on over the next couple months, as we start to get into, more important games and the next part of the season.
Yeah, it would be so nice to be out of 500 too, above 500. Can we just like get out of that spot where it's like we win a game, so we're like above 500, and then we lose the next one, and then we're right back at it? I'm like, this is so stressful. I just want to like, we're doing great. Okay, I just want to be like 10 games above or something where it's not like, okay, it's game to game. Like that would be nice. I just want to enjoy Celtics basketball. Okay. It's already stressful enough when I can't even see the game. I'm just looking at the ESPN app like, okay, what's going on? What's going on? I'm like keeping up with it, trying to figure it out. But yeah, it would be nice. I would just like the less stress, man.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I definitely agree with that. So I think your positivity hopefully will help them to just keep playing solid basketball here and just continue to build that chemistry that they've kind of struggled with all year. So I guess we'll see what happens with it. But I still am holding out some hope and just hoping that the appropriate adjustments are made and they can figure things out. But So we'll see. But something else that I wanted to talk about, actually, based on news that came out today about the NFL and a certain player from past Patriots player that is now being released from the Dolphins, Kyle Van Noy. And there's speculation out there that maybe a Patriots reunion is in the cards for him. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
It's funny because I feel like I'm torn because the fan of me wants nothing to do with him, right? Because I'm like, the second he left, he was just saying all sorts of nasty stuff about the team. I'm just like, not here for it. So I'm like, stay away from my team, okay? But at the same time, you know, the linebacker position was a big hole last year. I mean, Chase Winovich and Josh Uche were doing, you know, what they could, but they were definitely missing Hightower. And so now that he's returning, that's good. That's exciting. But the more depth that they can add to that, I mean, they have some others like Anthony Jennings and whatnot, but having Van Noy, who's familiar with the game, who did really well in his time with the Patriots, I'm all for it. As long as they can get him for not what he's asking for. Yeah. I think there was rumors he was supposed to get 10 million, I think, this year from the Dolphins, but people were thinking he might be wanting to get like 12 and a half. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I think they're already paying, I think it's Hightower. They're paying like 17, I want to say. So I'm like, I don't, that's not ideal. So if they can get him on like a cheaper contract, that I'm all for it. But it also, I think a big thing because of what he was saying about the Patriots once he left is whether or not he's open to a return. Yeah. I think that's a big thing too. It doesn't matter. Like if they want him back, it's whether or not he's going to want to go back.
Yeah, and people sometimes forget about the player's perspective when it comes to these things too, because it's like the player could very easily be like, well, I don't really want to go there, even if for everybody else watching on the outside, it might seem to make sense. And I think you hit the nail on the head by saying any depth that they can add to that would be beneficial. And I mean, we saw them struggle defensively this year too. There was a very, very much a lot of inconsistency this year on defense. And I think that obviously Hightower missing was made such a big difference in the defense this year. And it was a blatant hole without having him. But I think having him back, that will things will change and we'll see a better defensive performance, I think, in this next season. But I really think it's a possibility that he could be like, I mean, I want to go anywhere but returning to New England just after everything that happened there. And I think the same could be said for a player like maybe Jimmy Garoppolo, who people are speculating that maybe he ends up back with the Patriots too. But would he want to go back after everything that he went through with the organization also? So players like that, you have to wonder if they would even be interested in coming back, because he might not be. And I think that's a really likely possibility. And I think we need to look at that side of it too. But if he wants to come back, or he seems like he would be open to coming back to New England, I would love to see that reunion and love to see him come back. Because I think that would just be such an enhancement for the defense, just having him back. And so, but like you said, it wouldn't be worth what he's asking for. And I would not go for it if it involves spending that much money on him. And granted, they have a lot of cap space for this offseason, and that's going to be very beneficial, I think, and hopefully they use that the right way when it comes into, free agency and just what they do with the rest of this offseason. And now that free agency really is in full effect, and I think that it'll be interesting to see how they utilize that cap space, but I do not think that he's worth what the asking price would be. So I would not want to see him come back unless they can get him for lower than that.
Yeah, especially because there's so many other places that they need to address. They need to address the quarterback situation. They need to address the wide receivers and the tight ends and the secondary, because JC Jackson is going to free agency, so we don't know if he's coming back. They are talking about trading Stephon Gilmore, or even on the offensive line, David Andrews is going to free agency, and so is Joe Thuney, and even on the other side, Lawrence Guy. I think the Patriots have 25 players going to free agency. So yeah, they have a lot of money, but they have a lot of guys that they might want to bring back. So if, with Hightower coming back, they already have him under contract, so they're not going to be paying him anymore, and it's not going to hit the cap they have. Bringing in Van Noy would be great for the familiarity and, helping the younger linebackers, but with all the money that they have, I feel like they're going to need to spend it elsewhere because there are more issues that need to be addressed than just the locker.
Yeah, yeah, and we know and we saw, I mean, from this season, there was just so many issues, offensively especially, that they need to address this off season. And I mean, that starts with the most obvious, which is the quarterback position. So, in terms of that, though, there's been a lot of mixed opinions on Cam coming back for another year with the Patriots. There's some people that are like, I cannot deal with another year of Cam. But on the opposite side of that, people are like, he really didn't get an off season with the team, which is true. He didn't get enough time to really get acclimated to the offense, and then he got COVID, so obviously that was a step back, and then he came back. And also he didn't have the help offensively. He didn't have weapons, and it's hard for me to really feel like you would put another quarterback in that situation that he was in and feel like they would have been able to succeed. And even if we still had Brady this year, I really don't know that they definitely would have had a winning record. I don't think it would have been as bad as it was if they still had Brady. But if you put another quarterback in that situation, it's hard for anybody to succeed like that. Even if you bring in a quarterback like a Deshaun Watson, who's like a top 5 quarterback in the league, he still needs help around him for whoever that quarterback is. So I think with Cam, it was frustrating to watch him in a lot of circumstances because there were times when mistakes were made that were on him, and we did see that. But at the same time, there's a lot of factors that go into this where it's hard to really say that Cam is just not a good quarterback for this team, or that he's, that everything's his fault, because the situation and the circumstances just weren't set up for him to succeed this year. So you have to wonder if Bill wants to give him another chance and just brings him back for another year, hopefully with some more weapons, some wide receivers, and get him a solid tight end that can be reliable, and maybe try to see how he does in that situation and see if he can show improvement. And I do think if they do even bring Cam back, or whoever it is, I do think it would be in their best interest to also draft a young quarterback that they can maybe develop into the system, while the veteran quarterback that is Cam or whoever it ends up being will start games. Because I can't see Bill not wanting to sign a veteran quarterback and just drafting. And I mean, he kind of already has flat out said that he doesn't plan on drafting a starting quarterback. And I think that makes sense, because I don't think he would want to stick around for the full rebuild anyway.
Yeah.
But I think that if they do draft a quarterback, they could draft a quarterback in a later round maybe that could train under somebody who's a veteran quarterback.
Yeah, and see, I'm on the Cam train. I'm one of those big Cam hypers. So I think that people confuse my stance on him, though. I agree about, 2020 he was not set up for success. No quarterback that into that situation was set up for success. Not even just dealing with all of the things that they dealt with, but being the first guy after Tom Brady.
Exactly.
Like,
that's 20 years in with somebody, it's,
Yeah, I mean, and especially from the fans too, like they are so brutal. And I'm just like, guys, like, this is going to be a different thing. There's going to be growing pains because we don't have Tom Brady anymore. He's not coming back. And finding a Tom Brady is like finding a needle in a haystack. So like Cam Newton wasn't coming in there to be the next Tom Brady. So I think that a lot of people want to have an immediate fix at the quarterback situation, which I understand. But I think that if you look at the free agent options, who is technically like an upgrade over Cam, who already played for the Patriots, already familiar with the coaches, the schemes, the system, the players. And, because I think that, a big favorite is like Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, there's been talk about that.
Yeah, and I'm not like against it, but I think that people got a lot. They got really excited over when he came in for Derek Carr, and like, yeah, he did well, but he's been on the Raiders, so it's possible. But I think that some people focus too much on, oh, well, he can throw the ball. Cam can't throw the ball. Well, that's not true, because this is the thing. This is something I was talking about with someone earlier. People want to say Cam can't throw the ball, but at the same time say that he has no deep threats.
Yeah.
Well, if he doesn't have anyone to throw to deep downfield, then why would he? Like that doesn't make any sense. So I think that bringing Cam back is not a bad option. That, having a proper offseason, building around him, drafting a quarterback that he can mentor. He's not the answer. He's not going to be a long-term answer. He's going to be a bridge quarterback. So I think that people are forgetting about that too. He's not the solution. It would be great if he came in and balled out, in 2021, and then maybe he could be the quarterback for a handful of years because he is only 31. He's going to be 32 soon. But I think that, as we've seen from like Stafford and Deshaun Watson, like they've specifically listed teams that they were willing to go for, and the Patriots aren't on there. So, JJ Watt just went to the Cardinals. I don't know if there's anything that would have made him want to go to the Patriots, but I think that offensively, bringing Cam in, he carries, like that legendary status to a lot of people. And so he could entice free agents to come there, especially with the desperate need for offensive help. I don't know that an Allen Robinson is going to say, yeah, let me go and sign with you because you brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick or, Marcus Mariota. Like, I don't know that these big names are going to want to go to the Patriots because that's who's going to be handing them the ball,
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's like there's some notable free agents on the market this year, and they could get some great talent on this team if they utilize that cap space and Bill's aggressive this offseason. But who wants to go here when they know that this team is kind of in the process right now of having to rework the offense to be contenders again? And even from a quarterback perspective, why would you want to go to a team that you feel like you can't rely on your offense, or you don't have anybody that can really step up and be a solid target? Because, I mean, N'Keal Harry was disappointing, and Julian Edelman's going to be questionable, just with his age and longevity and everything. And just, I think that when you look at the receiving core right now, no quarterback would want to step into that position, I don't think, with the way that his offense is set up right now. So it's going to be a tough offseason, I think, but it's going to be really important to see what they do with it. But if they do bring back Cam for another year, I think you're right. I think he's just going to be a bridge quarterback for a young quarterback that hopefully can be trained into the system that is more reliable than Stidham and can get the job done, but just will need time to learn the Patriots organization and the system and the coaching style and just get the ropes of the NFL, so that bridge quarterback that maybe is Cam, who probably wouldn't be able to lead them to a championship. You just have to wonder if maybe Bill stays with him because of comfortability while they work with the young guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't know if you saw that story. I think it was last week where they said Belichick has been raving about Cam since the season ended. So whether or not that's like a business thing, I think Ray mentioned it on Dear Passion, where maybe he's just trying to talk up Cam to see if someone else will sign him. I don't know how much that would really benefit him. Like, I don't know that Belichick being like, Cam was great is really going to be like, wow, we're going to look at 2020 and be like, you know what? I'm going to listen to what Belichick's saying. Like, I don't know. But I think that if they signed him sooner, I think that would be good too. I think people forget that he wasn't signed until the end of June. And then all of the COVID stuff happened, right? So I think that they need to sign a quarterback like ASAP in free agency. And I think what they do in free agency is going to say a lot about how they're dealing with the season and how they're going to draft. But I think that the quarterback position specifically is the one that they need to address first, because as you're saying, if you don't have a quarterback, or let's say people just think that it's going to be Stidham or you're going to go with a rookie, that's not going to draw offensive players to your team, especially where, a lot of players are, one, chasing rings, right? And two, money. Well, the Patriots are not known for giving out huge contracts. So a lot of the time people were going there because they wanted to play with Tom Brady and they wanted to win. So if you take Tom Brady out of there, now they just want to win. But if they don't have a quarterback, then it's like, well, why are they going to sign there? So I think, I think free agency, is in a couple weeks. It's about a few weeks before the draft. So it's going to be really interesting because I think that's going to be very telling about what Belichick is going to do.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. It's going to be a fun offseason just with the amount of just players that are on the market this year, and just to see where people end up. And JJ Watt signing with the Cardinals, which I think was relatively surprising to people, just because a lot of people didn't even know that he was on there, that they were on his radar. So with just that happening and the Matthew Stafford stuff, I think it's just going to be a really fun offseason to watch. But I do hope that the Patriots can kind of put themselves in more of a position to compete with their own division now that the Bills and Dolphins are good teams and they're going to be tough to play. So I hope that they can do something this offseason to just kind of set themselves up for more future success in the next few years. So it'll be interesting to see how they utilize those picks in the draft and just the free agency period when we really start to see kind of what they do.
Especially having pick number 15. I mean, when's the last time that they even had a pick outside of the 20s? Like that's a thing too that people want to talk about, you know, the draft. And I'm like, but as a Patriots fan, you should know that they've basically been drafting like 28 and later. So, you know, I mean, if you put a lot of stock into where people are drafted, which I think is kind of silly, then obviously they were at the bottom of the round. So maybe they didn't have the best ones to choose from at that point. So having number 15, you know, people want him to draft Mac Jones. Lots of rumors that they're going to need to trade up. So I think that free agency is going to be exciting. The draft is going to be exciting. But again, as I said about the Celtics, you need to manage your expectations because for all we know, Belichick's not going to trade up. He'll trade down, or he'll not take a quarterback at 15. He'll take like a punter. You know, like for all we know, that's a very Belichick move. So
it is.
Like, don't get too excited.
No, it's true. That is a Belichick draft type of move too, to like pull something like that, and like, you know what I mean? So I guess we'll have to just wait and see, but I have optimism and I have hope, and I think they have things to work with. So hopefully we can just watch how this all plays out and feel confident about next season. But before we go, why don't you just tell people kind of where they can find you, give a shout out to Dear Pats Nation and everything else.
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter all the time. So you can find me on Twitter at SmarshXO. So it's SARSHXO. And then I'm on Dear Pats Nation, which is now on exclusively on YouTube. So you can just search Dear Pats Nation. I'm on there from Tuesday to Thursday. We go live every night, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I still am writing with full press coverage. I just haven't written anything for about a month now. I kind of wanted to digest the season. So I always have a pinned tweet of my latest article. So if you ever want to read anything that I have to say, anything that I wrote during the season, you can go on there as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely love your work, and it was a pleasure having you on the show this week. Everybody, I hope you have a good rest of your week. You know where to find Boston Balling on all podcast streaming platforms or on social media. I look forward to talking to you all next week, and go Boston Sports. Have a great rest of your night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in again.